Good morning, everybody. Welcome back. Another lovely Friday here. It's Maker That Money with Pooch from Repkord. Along with me, as always, I've got my trusty sidekick, the king, the lord of the empire of sticky, Mr. Andrew Mayhall. Andrew, how are you today?
I'm doing all right.
He's
Be
doing all
feeling a
right.
little bit better, but
Hanging in there. Good week, I hope.
yeah.
Good week. Good.
Uh,
And with us, we are so lucky to have this guest today. I'm really excited about this. We've got Chuck Hellebuyck from CHEP. I don't know what to say. Filament Friday. You know, you go by a lot of different terms, but Chuck,
Yeah, it's
welcome
Chuck
so.
Filament Friday.
There you go. There you go. Welcome so much. Thank you for being here. We could not have a better guest for this week's topic because we're going to talk in a little bit about diversification of your business and your hustle and whatnot. And there is no more diversified guy. Chuck has got his hands in a lot of different things, and we're going to dive in on that. But why don't you, for those who haven't met you before, I mean, that's kind of silly because most of the people that are with us in the chat here have definitely met you. But give us the elevator pitch. Tell us what CHEP is all about.
Okay. Well, first of all, CHEP stands for Chuck Hellebuyck's Electronic Products. That's where the CHEP comes from. And it really goes back to, God, when the internet started. I'm that old. So I launched a website to do electronics because that's my background. I'm an electrical engineer. I like designing stuff. But even before that, if you go back, my family has been in business for years, small business stuff. So I've always had my hand in something, cutting grass as a kid or, whatever. I was always had a side hustle essentially.
He's a hustler.
And so electronic. So Chuck Hellebuyck's Electronic Products was an extension, a side hustle for my day job. And I wanted to do design work for people. I quickly realized I didn't have the time to do that. But what I learned is all the tools that I'd learned how to use or track down, someone else could start doing their own electronic design. So I started selling kits of the software and the hardware, programmers, microcontrollers, things like that, so they could design their own stuff. And then I started writing articles to help them use it, which led to being published in a Nuts and Bolts magazine, National Electronics magazine, which led to a publisher asking me if I wanted to write a book, because he said, you're able to take the technical stuff and really bring it down to earth. He says that's a rare talent. And so I ended up starting writing books, became an author. Right?
Wow.
And then I found out how little profit the author makes.
Yeah.
So I learned the self-publishing business, and then I started self-publishing books, and I've since published 10 books, mostly on electronics, I think one on 3D printing. And that went really well. I also had electronics designs that I had on the side. I had an Arduino module before there was Arduino, but it wasn't nearly as good as Arduino. But eventually I did my own Arduino module for microchip PIC users because Arduino was AVR. And then I did my own shields and stuff and tried to sell all that stuff. Nothing that was ever big, but it was fun. It was side hustle, extra cash.
Right.
But the books did really well. The books is really what started to make money for me for many years, help pay my mortgage, help pay for my sons to play hockey and things like that.
Sure.
And that went great until, I don't know, about 9 years ago, book sales really started to drop off. And I said, okay, time to shift again, because business is all about, right, shifting and adapting. And
absolutely.
And I said, well, this YouTube thing, everyone's going to YouTube instead of reading a book. So I launched a YouTube channel, and I was crappy as could be at the beginning, but then eventually got better. But the whole idea, well, it's CHEP. It was supposed to be electronics focused with some CNC, like, I don't know if you can see it, CNC back here, for cutting circuit boards, and 3D prints for doing brackets and boxes and stuff. The 3D print stuff just took off. And so I said, oh, go with it. Yeah. So
there you go.
So that's how it became Chuck Hellebuyck's Electronic Products, Filament Friday. So
wow.
I had CNC Sunday, Filament Friday, and then there's supposed to be electronics videos. And if you go back in my early videos, there were some, but the 3D printing just took over, and that's kind of where I'm at today.
I mean, you've covered so much ground, and then on top of that, for a lot of it, you had a full-time job. I think you worked. You're in the Detroit area, right? And so you were in the automotive industry, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, I spent 22 years working for Ford. I have several designs that are, well, they're mostly not floating around anymore. Older cars, they'd be there.
Yeah.
Taurus
Oh, wow.
and town car and thing. I have 3 patents from designs that I made there.
Yeah.
So I did a lot of professional electronics design and manufacturing, and I've worked in assembly plants. So I know the automotive industry like the back of my hand. It's easy. But then they dipped down there when Chrysler and GM filed bankruptcy. Ford didn't. I left like a year before that.
Ooh,
and went to a semiconductor company where I basically do training material, and that's still my day job for now until I retire.
Wow.
So
you know,
impressive.
It really is. We've talked a number of times on past episodes about the power of the pivot and how, you know, being successful in business is really just about trying, you know, as much as I hate to say it, it's like that shotgun approach or that, you know, throw whatever you can against the wall and see what sticks kind of thing. I mean, Chuck, you're such a good example of that, and embracing that too. And so we're lucky. We've said that we are able to use a lot of this technology in this day and age that allows us the flexibility to pivot. 3D printing is a great example of that, right? Because you're not committing a lot of resources to mold make and all that stuff. You can just, you know, hey, you know what? Let's give it a shot. Let's get it up there. Let's see if it sells. And if it doesn't, we'll try the next thing. No big deal. I've always loved your very, you know, good approach. And you've certainly found that not only can you pivot like that, you start to, as you wander through your business journey, you start to find you start to spark new ideas. You start to get inspired by things that may work even better. And so you've had such a perfect combination of the educational side, right? So you've got these little residual revenue streams coming in from books and whatnot, from your YouTube channel. So you're a content creator on top of all of this. And then you're using that to sell product. And it's just such a powerful combination. And I love seeing people who do that well, the way that, you know, the way that you do, and that embrace it.
Right. It's and you know, the market will lead you too if you listen. You know, if you listen to what your customers are saying, you see where the issues are. That can also open opportunities, even though it can be a headache for a while. It can open opportunities, and that's the biggest thing is you got to be open to that change. You can't sit around and say, okay, I'm making good money, I don't want anything to change.
Right.
No, if you're making good money, then it's time to start thinking, because it's not going to last. So
that's right.
But I still like some of my electronic. I you know, like a lot of my stuff I've sold off or through, you know, royalty arrangements or stuff. So I still make money from some of my electronic stuff. My books still sell, not at certainly in big volume, but they still sell. So I've never left the revenue behind. I left some of it. I shared it with, you know, someone else who wants to do the extra work. But the idea is that there's still, you know, you've got that. It's almost like you invest in a stock, you're still getting a dividend. You know, it's just you're just not getting as much, but you're still there. You know, so never, you don't have to give it up. You just have to shift to maybe where the better revenue is. You know, where it needs your time.
Absolutely. And so you know you've articulated a number of what sounds like a number of revenue streams for you. So you know you are diversified and then some in terms of if any one of these stops selling or you decide to stop doing them, you're not, you know, under threat of you know, having the whole thing come tumbling down, right? The don't put all your eggs in one basket type thing that we talk about, which is great.
You have to.
But obviously when you're getting started, that, you know, that's easier said, you know, with hindsight and stuff. When you're getting started and you're trying to build a market and you're trying to build a brand and all that stuff, you know, you don't always have the luxury of just, or the time and the energy, you know, like, or the resources, you know. So think back for me for a second to like what your first, you mentioned mowing lawns. That was one of my first ones too. And, you know, maybe it was a summertime job and stuff, but then where did you go from there? It seems like it was in your blood from the get-go. I think we've talked offline before, even like with your family and stuff. You'd mentioned that, you know, you were selling stuff from a very young age and always had that entrepreneurial mindset.
Yeah. I came from my dad who always kind of had a side hustle, and, you know, he did flea markets and, you know, garage sales, and then he fixed lawnmowers out of the garage, so I learned to fix lawnmowers right alongside of them. We go to bike auctions, police bike auctions, buy a bunch of bikes, fix them up, sell them on Sundays. People coming home from church, So I learned, mechanical stuff from an early age, just doing that. And then eventually that became a business. That's still a business that runs today. My brother runs, and lawnmowers, and mostly lawnmowers now, not so much bicycles anymore. But so I grew up working in there, but then always electronics on the side. And so once I went to college, got my engineering degree.
Okay.
But I always had stuff going on the side, but the whole idea is that you say, you're not making a lot, you're not building. The whole idea is you're investing in yourself. If you're doing it just to make money, might as well stop, because there's no guarantees.
Right.
The money will come if you're dedicated to, and you may have to shift to do it. But the whole idea is that you're looking for the opportunities that you want to work with, things that you want to do, something that you bring that maybe someone else doesn't do as well. There's your advantage. That's what you can sell.
Right.
And so that's what you go after. And that could, like you said, it's like juggling. You got to keep, so many balls in the air.
Yeah.
If you're just got one ball in your bounce and that, you lose it, you're done. So you've got to have multiple balls in the air if one drops, you can still juggle a little bit. And that's the revenue stream. So, and you also got to keep yourself interested. If you do one thing, eventually you get bored. If you do multiple things,
that's the best part.
You can go off on this for a while, go off on that for a while, and keep yourself entertained, because it's work, But it's like going bowling, playing the sport. That's work.
Sure.
But it's work you enjoy, so it's not really work, right? So if you can make a job more of something you enjoy, then it's like,
yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, gotta kind of balance themselves.
Yeah, and
So,
obviously,
but I forget the original question. But
no, it was perfect. I mean, you've spent a lot of time honing your craft, and like you said, it's you got to have some passion behind it, right? A lot of people in the chat are just completely agreeing with you. Like, just making money, that's you're gonna burn yourself out if you can't find a way for having it, be sustainable, enjoyable, and all that stuff. So there's obviously a yin and a yang to a balancing act and all that stuff. I'm wondering if you could think back to a time for us, Chuck, where maybe you had an idea that you were sure was going to do great and it didn't do so great. And what did that feel like? Did you feel like you held on to it for too long? Or were you just like, we gave it a shot and we moved on? Because you don't seem like the kind of person to me that takes it too personally when it's not going the way that you want. You just kind of tweak and maneuver. Is that fair?
Yeah, that's fair. No, that's fair. That's definitely fair, because I love electronic design. That's this day I still love electronic design, even if no one wants to watch a YouTube video about it or anything else. I'm still doing it. But when I went to work for Ford out of college, and they did their own design, I was working my way into doing that, and then they shifted, and then they went to outsourcing a lot of that stuff. So I said, well, okay, that's when I started electronic products. Website and the whole bit, trying to design, because I didn't want to lose those skills, and I still like doing it. But it didn't take long to figure out I didn't have the time to do it. So that's when I had to okay, I got to shift, where I did more of the training. What I took my knowledge that I learned, I still did the design on the side, but I used that knowledge to write books and articles and things like that. But as far as, God, I had a thought and I kind of lost it there, but there's always a point where you have to assess, is this worth going forward? That's how I remember now. The example, there was a little module called the Basic Atom. There was a basic stamp, which was very popular. It's kind of like the early Arduino. And a guy's local came up with Basic Atom. To me, it was better in so many ways. It was faster. It was easier to program. You can do more with it.
Yeah.
And so I wrote a book on how to use the Basic Atom. And I thought, I'm going to sell a crap load of books, right? And I went to the first maker fair in Dearborn at Henry Ford. I have my books out there. I'm excited, man. I'm going to sell a bunch. I think I sold 3.
He's ready to sign. Get your book signed by Chuck Hellebuyck.
It was my first book I ever got on Amazon, because at that point they sold 65-70% of the books. You had to be there.
Sure.
The book didn't sell. It didn't sell. That was my first self-published book. So there were so many things I stuck my neck out, self-publishing and the whole thing crashed. And and I will still sit back and say that was one of the best books I've ever written. But it didn't matter because people didn't want it. So I said, okay, let's go back. And I did keyword searches and looked at what people were looking for. And at the end of the day, they were looking for embedded C programming books. And there weren't enough out there. So I shifted. I wrote the next book was my Beginner's Guide to Embedded C Programming. And that book hit mid-July, I forget what year, but mid-July, I sold and this is self-published. So I sold 20 books in like the first 2 weeks. The next month I sold 40 books. The next month I sold 85 books. The next month I sold 150 books because I hit the right target. I hit what people wanted instead of what I wanted. And that book continued to sell. I ended up writing a volume 2 and a volume 3. And that series basically paid my mortgage for 2 years. It paid for the boys' hockey. It was tremendous. And it was because I self-published. I kept most of the profits, not the publishing company. So
there you go.
So I went from probably absolute low to absolute high because I was able to shift.
What a great story. I mean, one, I really appreciate that you share kind of the fail piece of it, because we don't get to hear that a lot in this day. Everybody's, online talking about how great their life is and all this stuff, and you don't get to hear, the hardship as much, but it's such a critical part of the journey. And we always say, like, you the only way to lose in business is when you give up, right? And so a lot of times is you just got to give yourself enough runway. And there's a ton of people out there that put themselves out there, put themselves into writing a book and only sell 3, and then they'll be so destroyed, right? So it's like, how do you not let that weigh on you, or how do you not take it part? I'm sure you had your moments where it's, what am I doing, all this stuff, but it's like you get up the next day, you put your shoes on, you put your big boy pants on, and you get back to work. And I got to tell you, man, you're an inspiration in that regard. I always watch, even in this day and age, with your YouTube channel and how much you love to talk analytics. That you're a student, you're always learning the new process and all that stuff. You never stop learning, and you dig into the data and you try to figure out what it is. And hey, if it doesn't work, you don't take it personally. You get back up and you do it again.
Right. Well, like I said, I'm an engineer, so that's what we do. I mean, it's just, you got to figure out how to, read the data sheets and figure out how to make the code work, and why is this thing failing? So you got to dig in. And if I didn't like that, I wouldn't be doing it. But yeah, so it's just a various form of that. I mean, another example was 4 years into my YouTube journey. I was doing what I like to do. I was doing, Tinkercad and designing stuff. But 4 years in, my channel was essentially dying. I mean, taken off, Angus had taken off, other channels were passing me up, and I'm going, well, what am I doing wrong? I had my core Patreon supporters, which is my favorite people in the world. They kept me going. And I said, I'm not going to let them down. But what happened was, looking at the data, I had, at one point I threw together a video, and I threw together a video of how I fixed a printer in my print farm. Yeah. And I go, I just needed a video. So I just redid all my steps, redid that video, or redid the fix as a video. And I put links to the parts that I used to Amazon affiliate links, which I was making $30 a month from Amazon. I wasn't doing much. And that video, and then I forgot about it. Yeah. And it was like 2 months later, I'm looking at my stats, my channel's dying. I'm actually thinking maybe I need to quit YouTube and shift to something totally different, right? And I'm going, no, I'm not going to quit. I don't quit, but there other guys are making it. What am I doing wrong? And then I got a comment from somebody that said, hey, where do I get those couplers that you showed in that video I talked about? And I go, the link's in the description. He goes, they're sold out. And I'm like, what, I got 3? What, I picked the wrong, source. So I gave him a new link, fixed the link in the video, and then I thought, oh wait, I can look at the stats in Amazon and see how many I sold. And I went in there and saw I sold like 300 of these couplers. Yeah. And there's like a 2-month delay before you see it, and I had like a $300 royalty coming from 30 to 300 just from that video. Yeah. And that's when I stopped and I said, wait, I'm doing all this fixing, updating my machines, trying different things. I'm just not making videos about it. So I shifted and started making videos about the things I fixed and all the stuff I print on Tinkercad. Now it's like, okay, that took a backseat.
Yeah.
And the channel took off.
Yeah.
And revenue went up, subscribers went up, AdSense went up, and I haven't really looked back since. The thing's been growing ever since.
God, I love hearing that kind
That's
of stuff.
amazing.
It's well, and you know, a lot of the people we've talked to or that are content creators will echo probably the same thing. I think it all comes down to you got to find your voice, you got to find your niche, right? What is it that you're doing? Why are people going to your channel and not somebody else's, right? Are you meeting a need? Are you you know, and because you know you're just like, hey, keep looking at it. It's not. I don't think that a YouTube channel ever dies. Just the same way a business doesn't die. It's a business and it's a different type of business, but it's like you're gonna have to pivot sometimes, and you're lucky that you've got all this fantastic data at your fingertips that past businesses didn't have that kind of immediate like analytical data to dig into to like help make business decisions with. So what a great time, you know, to be doing that. So, you know, looking at how do we flip you know, a negative into a positive, and you know, another great example there, Chuck. Andrew, you're not going to get off the hook here just kind of cruising by over in the corner there. I know you've got some stories. We've kind of gone a little bit away from diversification, but I think it's very related to talk about obviously like the progression of a business, right? Because that's
Sure.
where a lot of the pillars, you know, that support the whole thing come from. So when you look at the overall pillars that are supporting Andrew Mayhall and who you are and what you know as a business person today, you know, it's not all 3D Gloop, right? That you had other formative experiences as well that got you to where you are, that led you to have a stronger outcome, just the way that
Sure.
Chuck does. You
Sure.
briefly talked about your past thing, because Gloop is actually your second business. I got him was mid
Yes.
cough. There we go.
Yeah. Gloop is Gloop. Well, let's put it like this: it's my second official start of a business. You know, there's been multiple things that I've done in the past, trying to, you know, pull from past experiences or you know develop things. You know, like myself. Something that Chuck said that resonated very well. With me is that you have to look at the things you do as an investment in yourself. And you know, if you're constantly working towards bettering what you do, I think you're not gonna view it as work. It's gonna be something where it's like, oh hey, I can make this progress. I can get to a point where you know it can support me, and it creates this feedback loop. um yeah, you know, I've had multiple starts. My first attempt was you know a massive one, but you know, ended up raising a lot of money from private equity groups, and you know, building out a really awesome team. And I learned from ultimately what would be a failure to you know rebuild and go in a different direction.
Mm-hmm.
um
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And you know, I'm not going to go into it now, but I think most people that have any kind of business usually have, you know, the one that they typically succeed on is not usually their first one, right? It's oftentimes third, fourth, fifth, and hopefully, you know, you're taking lessons along the way and going from there. What I want to ask the both of you, and we've talked about this before, you know, there's this mentality when you're doing a business, it's like, okay, pick one thing and do it well. That's kind of a very gross oversimplification, right? Like that's a way of talking about like, oh, find your niche, find your voice, that kind of thing. That's great. But it's not one thing, right? Like how do we reconcile the need for focus? Because we've talked about this before, the shiny object syndrome, right? Like as makers, that always is creeping in, right? We've got a million different ideas of things that we would love to be spending our time on. But realistically, we have a limited amount of hours in the day, and we're not doing anybody any good if we're just trying to juggle too many balls at once, right, Chuck? So, you know, how do you reconcile that need for focus and driving toward a specific goal with not having all your eggs in one basket?
Well, I think the biggest thing, and I come back to, if you're doing it for money, you're going to fail. I mean, we all going to make money. We all got bills to pay, you know. But you've got to stay focused on what your overall goal is. And that goal can shift, but you still have to know what it is. Like deep down, my goal is to help people with technology. I mean, if you go through anything that I've done,
Yeah.
I loved it as a kid and I learned from others, and now I'm able to pass it on. So everything I do falls back into that. Now, what segment of it? Yeah, that's what shifts. But I never really lose sight of that goal. So, so that to me is the most important thing. You have to understand what it is you want, what it is you want to do, and then try to make money at it. You know, is part of it, but that shouldn't be the main goal. Hopefully, the money follows and you're doing it right.
Yeah.
But that's why, like I said, juggling. You know, there's going to be times you want to go play with that new shiny thing, new idea.
Yeah.
That's time management too. You got to, you know, you got your business and you're doing your stuff, but there's going to be time where you need to just take a break, spend family time. You need to take a vacation occasionally. You need to go play with your shiny object, your idea, whatever. Just know that, you know, just like we have a day job, they give you time off to go live your life too. So you have to run your business as a part of your life, not your life, which is kind of hard to do because you put so much in it.
You're just dropping gems today, Chuck. All these quotes. I love it.
So that's the balls in here. It's always a juggle. Everything, you know, everything you do, you know, there's family, you got your juggling, your job, your job. So it's that's life, right? That's how well you handle that is the key. And you got to stay positive because it's just as soon as you start thinking negative will follow. If you think positive will follow. It doesn't always work, you know, but for the most part, that's what you have to do. You know, you have to. Things are down. It's going to be tough. Keep going. It will get better. If you don't believe that,
I mean, so it's been said a million different ways in times. You know, like what was it? Oprah's big thing with the secret. It's like the energy that you put out there is what you're going to get back, right? I mean, I believe that very much. I think a lot of people in our position do as well, but it's really tough for a lot because you know time is the X factor at any given segment. You're gonna take a lot of beating and licks and all this stuff, and you got to just believe like, hey, you're gonna have bad days. Just because you're trying to be positive doesn't mean there's not gonna be the bad days. It's that you just got to make sure you're putting that energy out and you're not putting out the woe is me and all that stuff, because I think it works the other way too. If you believe that your life is in ruin or you're gonna fail, you're gonna fail. So that's a tough one to just. We can say that all we want, but you know, it takes people's commitment to learn. You got to live that. You got to learn that. I don't know. Andrew, do you have anything to add?
Well, one thing I've got a question, kind of getting back to the idea of the diversification, Chuck. Do you go out actively and sit, or do you sit and think of how can I diversify my portfolio? How can I get another revenue stream, or do you just kind of find yourself stumbling into it? And figuring out kind of, and as you were mentioning, building or doing something passionate, and then just seeing what happens. You follow what you're passionate about and then it turns into something, or are you sitting here trying to figure out what the next move is? Just curious.
Really the answer is yes to all of it, because you kind of make your own luck. Right? People say, "Oh, you're lucky this happened." Yeah. There's certain things I've been lucky on certain things, but I also put myself in a position sometimes to be lucky because I worked hard to be able to, say I go to Murph, and I get to meet with some company that I would never have met with before, and I find out they have some interesting products that maybe suddenly the wheels are turning what I can do. Maybe they want to work with me as far as sponsorship or something like that. So was that luck, or was it the fact that I was able to get myself in position to afford to go there and find the time and make that happen? So, but as far as, am I looking? Yeah, I'm always looking at opportunities. If you're not, then you're never going to, go anywhere. And there's many opportunities that I turned down. I mean, I've turned down sponsorships like crazy. I've turned down, review my printers for many years. There's many printers now that I review. I actually buy the thing because I don't want anybody telling me what I can and cannot say. But but I got myself to that point before I didn't have the money to do that.
Sure.
So it's really working towards, again, that goal and how you want to approach it, and then the money will kind of come. So, but I always try to shoot for a minimum 5-point revenue stream. So
Okay.
5 different points. So if I lose one, I still have revenue.
You're a 5-legged
If
table.
I lose 2, it's hurting me, but I still got revenue.
Okay.
But 5 revenue streams. And so for me, it's AdSense, there's Patreon, there's affiliates or any of that kind of thing.
Yep.
And then my side business stuff, which it's my flag that
there it
I've
is.
sold for years. This was one of my first videos.
Shout out to the
I fixed a flag in my mailbox. I saw an opportunity others may want it. I started selling on eBay and Etsy. Eventually, I built a whole print farm selling these things. I was selling 5,000 flags a year, sometimes more.
Wow.
Until eventually now it's injection molded. So I offloaded that to a partner who injection molds it, and then I have a partner who sells it. So that's a revenue stream. That also Can't Film It Friday toolkit was for my experience and things we put together, and my business partner sells that.
I love the merch plug.
Oh yeah.
The e-leveler, the e-leveler. This is electronics, an idea I had in my head. This was my shiny object. This was my thing. It's like,
I love this.
Okay, I want to play with this. How do I find time? And finally I found time to do it. I actually was a sponsored video, so I could, do that. So there's a reason to bring it into the channel. And I honestly thought I'd sell 25 of these things and be done. And, we've sold thousands and thousands of these things, and it's helped so many people level their bed. So you never know, right? It was just something I wanted to do. Yeah. I use it every day. I love it, but it's like, it's like that first book that people didn't want.
Yeah. Yeah. Listen,
people didn't want. No, turns out people didn't want it. So.
Yeah. No, real quick, listeners, for those listening back after the fact of the podcast, Chuck was holding up one of his current hot sellers. It's a leveler. It's a little electronics board for 3D printers that helps assist you in leveling the bed. Really slick design. As many of us that are in here have a 3D printing background, very useful tool. And you can find all this and all the other stuff that Chuck's been talking about. If you look, I've got a link to his website, his YouTube channel, all that stuff will be in the description. Please go check him out. Please go support him. He makes amazing stuff, no matter what you're into. He is the diversification master. So just more plugs for you there, Chuck.
And the thing is, I'm just showing it.
No, happy to do it.
There, but the idea is that all these different things bring in some form of revenue. No one thing could support you. No, but those together help build something. I still work a day job, so it's not like I'm like, oh, okay, I'm Rich going to go off and do this funny thing. My whole YouTube and the training and all, it's my retirement. It's what I want to do in retirement. It's
investing in his retirement.
So many guys leave a job and they have nothing to do, and 2-3 years later I see them, they're retired, and
that's not going to be a problem for you
because they just got no purpose.
Yeah,
this is my purpose. I love it. I love teaching. I love I'd be doing it even if there wasn't a YouTube channel, but this is what I'm building for the future. So it's I try to do that 5 points, maybe add a 6th or 7, but the whole idea is that
I love
you want a shotgun approach, and don't rely on one. And if one starts to falter, go back and figure out why it's faltering, get it back up. If one goes way too high, maybe you go, okay, maybe I'm focusing too much time on that because it's hurting the other ones. So sometimes you might have to knock it down, right? So it's like, if you go too many sponsors take over your channel. Do you want that really? Because then everything else is going to start to falter. So it's like, no, back off a little bit. So it's sometimes you got to give a little to gain.
I want to take a quick second to acknowledge everybody that's with us in the chat. Sorry, we've been just so enamored with this conversation. We're getting actually some questions and stuff in here. I just want to recognize you guys. And if you're listening back after the fact, we do this every Friday morning at 9 a.m. Pacific. We record it on YouTube, so you're welcome to jump on in the chat there. If you're feeling brave and you want to get on the hotline, you're certainly welcome to do that and join the conversation that way. We've got a link up above for that piece as well. So multiple ways to engage in the conversation. I just want to call out a couple key points that people have been saying. Chris, mentioned, Chuck, you hit on this really easily. Luck. We talk about luck. Luck is where opportunity meets preparation, right? So it's continuing to do it to the point where you collide with all your preparation, all that opportunity comes together, and we define that a lot of times as luck. But you put yourself in that spot. You don't. It just doesn't happen. So I think that's the right perspective. Excellent comment. Chris Perillo has been blowing up the chat. He's very, very excited. Loves your commentary about if you're doing it for money, you're doing it for the wrong reasons, or you're going to fail. And there was some sub conversation in there about what's the context on it. If you're doing to make money, you might as well stop, is what you'd said. The way I take that, and correct me if I'm wrong, but it's not just about anybody can get in and try to do something to make money for a period of time. We're talking about creating a sustainable venture, right? And so if your focus is simply on the dollars and cents, you're probably going to fail. I mean, it's a gross oversimplification and comment, but it's like if you're building, if you're slowly, building up, having some passion behind it, like the money will come. Is that a fair synopsis, you think, of what we're trying to get out there? It's not to say that you can't just try to, hey, there's sometimes you just need to make some quick cash. That's not, there's nothing wrong with that. But
right, and that's kind of a job, right? I mean, that's what a job is.
But that's not what we're talking about.
Someone else went out, they're the entrepreneur. They went out and built this business, and then they're willing to, you work for them. But really, if you work for someone else, you're building their dream. You're building their future or whatever, right? You get a paycheck, which is cool, and there's nothing wrong with that. Some people, that's what they want to do. For me, I always wanted to do the things I wanted to do, and if I could tie the two together, fantastic, which I've kind of done. But it was, and that's where, money was needed. But the idea is that I'm going after the things that I like to do. I love helping people learn technology. I've learned to love 3D printing, and I still love electronics and that.
Right.
It just so happens I've found a way to make money from it. And so, yeah, I mean, you can't ignore the fact that you're putting all this work in and you're not going to make some money. It's always going to be a factor in there.
Sure.
But yeah, it's tough if suddenly you're doing something, all you're focusing on money, and all of a sudden that money dries up. How do you shift?
Right.
How do you shift? Because all your focus was on making money. How do you shift? I mean, the idea is, okay, I'm going to shift, make money over here. Over where?
That's a great point.
Yeah.
Because you never really had your core.
Yeah.
Your core was making money. It's like, doing what?
Yeah.
Why is anyone giving you money? What are you doing? So I mean, even the stock market, if you invest in the stock market, it's like, okay, you're investing to make money, but what are you investing in?
Right. Well,
you got to understand the companies you're investing in, or, you can throw it in a mutual fund, but then that's just letting someone else do it. So it's just, you have to understand them. And then what mutual fund you're investing in is something maybe you believe in, in the environments. You want to invest in things that help that, or maybe you want to, startups or whatever you invest in. You're still going to have a core that you're focusing on. So yeah, that's what I mean by it. I mean, you're trying to make money doing what you love.
Yeah.
But what is it that you love? That should be the focus.
Well, yeah, and you're talking about the difference between strategic and tactical, right? Well, of course, business strategy is like, we need to make money, but that tells you nothing about how to get there, right? The tactical, where you get in the trenches, how you get about it, like, and you have to have both, right? And that's a very, again, gross oversimplification. But along what you were just saying, Grant from 3D Musketeers had a great question about pivoting. Let's just pivot back to that really quick. How, though, he asks, do you handle a pivot when you want to make one, but specifically your market, like via social media, is decidedly not that group? So I think he's talking about kind of pivoting out of the same. You might get some, correct me if I'm wrong, Grant, but if you're getting feedback, that your pivot requires you going someplace that you're not familiar with, a new community or something like that. Is that what you're asking there? That's kind of what I read into that. How do you pivot out of your safe space if you don't have any inroads to a community? Is that something you worry about, or are you concerned with feeling comfortable with the market that you're trying to service? How much do you need to know that market ahead of time?
Oh, a lot. I mean, that's where the analytics come in, right? That's where
Right.
you at. Say you want to pivot to something else.
Yeah.
Um, Behind the scenes, this is where you take some time out. That's the new shiny thing. And then you go study that and figure out what is a hit, what is working, what is that new world. What is it about? Does that fit what you want to do? Does it fit with where you want to go? Is there an opportunity there that you can bring to this new opportunity that you don't see is there? There's still no guarantee this is going to work. But when you finally make that pivot, when you finally say, okay, I'm going to pivot from what I'm doing to maybe doing this over here, you already know there's a path. You already know there's potential. Already know there's opportunity. It's just a matter of can you deliver?
Right.
But no, you actually got to do more homework to pivot than just, I'm just going to pivot. No, you got to know more about that than what you're doing.
Sure. And to add a little bit of clarity and context to what Grant was asking, he was saying for example, what he wants to do, he wants to pivot into more 3D scanning content, but the analytics he's seeing, suggests that it's not remotely popular on YouTube at the moment. So that's something that you probably have some really interesting insight on, right? If like the analytics are telling you like, well, people don't seem to really like scanning content doesn't resonate. I don't know how you validate that entirely, but that's the fear, or maybe I don't know. How do you even know that, Grant? I guess that's what I'm not clear. Maybe it doesn't resonate because there hasn't been any good content, or are we putting the cart before the horse to some extent? Don't know.
Well, I mean, in general, he may have done his homework and found out, it's not a good path.
Yeah.
As much as he wanted to do, it's not a good path.
Yeah.
But at the same point, are there areas that he's looking, you're looking at that and you go, like I had a video where I took a clip, just a microphone stand clip, and I scanned it on my paper scanner, brought that in Tinkercad and, reproduced it. And it was just, I fixed the thing. That video blew up, and I got, a lot of positive feedback from that.
So 2D scanners are hot, Grant, just not 3D scanners. Yeah.
Yeah, it was 2D scan, exactly. And so I started looking into that. It's like, okay, there was definitely some interest, but it really was a variation of what I was already doing. As far as 3D scans, my biggest issue with the 3D scan was, although there's phone apps now that'll do it, but my biggest issue with the 3D scan and why I haven't gone down that path is all the editing and all the work you have to do after you scan it to make it work.
Yeah.
And now I'm like, okay, how many people want to go through that work?
Yeah.
How big is that audience that want to do that? And do you want to do all that work and show all that work? Personally, it wasn't for me. So I get companies offering me scanners and I'm like, nah, I'll pass. But it's just not for me. But I've kind of gone down that path before. I just don't think the tools are there yet. If it ever gets to the point where I could, take something, scan it real quick and boom, print it.
Yeah.
Okay, now we're talking something different, but.
Well, that's a really good point, that time is the X factor in this. There's nothing inherently about 3D scanning that theoretically couldn't do well, but obviously it's the collision of the accessibility of the tools, right? The simplicity of their use, how ubiquitous they are, right? All of those things that makes it intriguing. So when the price point comes down and when the technology gets to a point where people are having them more readily, the way they have 3D printers and stuff like that, then yes, absolutely, the content will probably do better. Maybe we're not there yet. You'd be very niche right now because the really good ones, as you well know, Grant, are not particularly affordable to most people, and so you're limiting your audience, and then to compound that, you're talking about a prosumer, like a professional or business, and they're not spending a lot of time on YouTube. A lot of times, like that's kind of backwards in a lot of ways. Not always, but a lot of those big business aren't.
But here's the thing: if you're interested in making scanning work, if you want to develop a product, like I develop a product, and you want to make it easier, you see that this is an opportunity where there isn't that out there. Now you've got, that's something you work on the side until you get that, done. And then you make content showing how easy it is to scan using your stuff, and so you've created your own market. So at that point, if you truly were passionate about scanning, you're not relying on other company stuff, you're making your own.
Right.
Now, again, is that a big enough business money-wise? again, hey, you gotta have to do your own analysis and everything. But
Can't help you there. Yeah.
yeah, but if your passion is making a scanner or making that work, again, that's what you go after.
Right.
It's not money driving you; it's your passion for what you're working on, and the money will follow.
Right.
That's a perfect example.
There you go, Grant. See, it's easy. You just have to make a better 3D scanner and then make the content around that. That's easy. It's wise words from Chuck Hellebuyck.
Yeah, good luck.
completely different animal there. But no, I think you're right. I think that like, and this is what I was talking about earlier on, that when you have that culmination of when you're positioning yourself as a subject matter expert on something and you have the product, you got that 1-2 punch that's just unbeatable, right? It's like you got the educational content behind it, you've also got the product, and it's just such a great, and then that's where like the ideas and then the companies start coming in, and so it takes some time. It takes some time to find it. My next question for you guys is about runway, because we talk about you just gotta keep going until you figure out what works, right? And there's going to be times where you're going to, this isn't working and I need to pivot, or I need to just completely stop this and focus on something else. How do you know when you've given it enough time? Like how do you get the feedback? Because I think there's a lot of stuff that you've probably done, Chuck, that one could argue has just been ahead of its time, right? You just got there too early. You could probably go in and probably tweak some content that you've done years ago that maybe do fantastic now, right? And it just wasn't there at that particular time. So that's such a challenge to determine. What do you think?
Oh yeah, definitely. I mean, I look back at when I launched, I was doing Tinkercad and designing things to fix around the house and projects, because I was looking at more, what do you do with a 3D printer? Because I lived through, I'm old enough that I lived through the computer age. I mean, the Apple I and all that was around when I was, a teenager. So I watched this, and a big part of those early years of the computer was, people wanting to learn DOS and the sub commands and what boards to use. They couldn't care less what you do with a computer. They were having more fun building their computer and learning their computer. And then once that was all established, then it became, what am I going to do with my computer? And that's when, VisiCalc and, and Word and all that stuff came about, and email, then we had the killer apps, right? Which I still don't think we've got a killer app for 3D printing. But when I started out, I'm showing what you could do with a 3D printer, and I didn't realize not a lot of people had a 3D printer. So my audience was small. And then when I shifted to how to update your printer, how to fix your printer, how to use a slicer, then it was a hit, because there was more people looking for that information. So what you do with it was ahead of the curve. Now I see that project videos and what to print and how to figure. I'm seeing more people doing those type of videos and having more success. And I'm going, oh my God, I was doing that, 4 or 5, 6 years ago. I could bring some of that back and do it. And I've actually done some of that, tested it. So yeah, there's an example in my mind where I was ahead of the curve.
Oh, for sure. For sure. It's timing is such a tricky one. Can you dig in a touch more maybe on like, are you, I don't know, maybe it's probably more of a gut feel. Somebody like you who's done this for so long and all this stuff, you probably developed a pretty good gut feel for stuff, right? So there's a good percentage of your decision making is probably driven by just like your gut feel. Is that fair? Or I know you pull analytics, and I'm not saying all, but you don't, like how much research do you really need to do before you convince yourself like you're on the right or the wrong path?
No, I'm never done. I'm never convinced. It's gut feel is just a start. It's like gut feel. Okay, maybe I'll like scanning. Okay, I have a gut feel and go check out scanning. But the whole idea is now I got to dive in and I got to get the analytics. I get, look for what people are, search Google Trends or whatever, I'll watch other people's videos. I'll see, where things are going before I can even go down that path. And if finally I decide, okay, there's enough data out there, I think this is worth trying, then I try it. And then I look at my own data. I look at my own stats, look at my own analytics. And is this going well? Should I maybe shift within this? What's working? What's not? Where are people dropping off of my video? Where they're watching it again? I'm constantly doing that. constantly. So I'm never really satisfied with a certain category. And so my gut feel is just a gut feel. And yeah, experience definitely plays a part, but I've been wrong so many times too. So it's like, I don't trust my gut as much as you may think, but I don't ignore it either.
Sure.
So it's one, it's kind of like, I say you want multiple, revenue streams, you want multiple idea streams, so that's why multiple ways I can get the analytics, but also ideas. Where do I get my ideas? Gut feel, watching other people, watching other videos. I mean, I think it was Steve Jobs that says, good artists copy, great artists steal.
Yeah.
Right. And it sounds really rude, but there's a lot of truth to that. A lot of truth to that.
Yeah.
Is someone you're standing on the shoulders of giants at that point, right?
Sure.
And so, but it's not just steal and then do it. It's the idea is that you're stealing what they've already accomplished, but now you're taking it to maybe a different direction or a next level or whatever. So to me, it's not really stealing, but he called it stealing. But I think that's really what he meant. It's the idea that they blazed the trail and now you want to take it further.
Well, and to dig deeper on that, I don't know, Andrew, what your feels are on this either, but it's not the idea. I always say, and this is another one of these gross oversimplification things, but the idea itself is worthless. It's the it's the way that you execute. So like there's a ton of people out there with fantastic ideas that just suck at marketing it, getting it out in front of people and all that stuff. And that's where Jobs, I think, is really talking about coming in and saying like, I'm going to take that. Like, this is a great idea. I'm going to find these diamonds in the rough and I'm going to really shine that light on it in a way that is just going to make it explode. Right. Because we see that all the time. Yeah. You know?
But the thing, how many times have you heard these successful guys will say, they have 1,000 ideas a day.
Yeah.
But they pick one or they pick two and they act on it. And they said, that's the whole thing. You're just sitting there making ideas and people say, oh, I had that idea long ago. I should have, I created that or I did this. Or did you act on it?
Yeah.
If you didn't act on it, having the idea, really, it's cool that you had the idea, and I'll give you credit. You're smart, creative, whatever, you had the idea, but the fact that you didn't do anything, even if you take the idea and you work with someone who's better in the areas where you're not good, design or whatever, it's just that you're trying to do that. And then as time goes on, that's where you find out, okay, you're going to shift, but ideas are just that. They're ideas, it's kind of like, opinions, everyone's got one, but it doesn't really matter if you don't take that opinion and do something to fix what's wrong or help people that's wrong. If you don't do anything, then it's just that's why I hate politicians, because for the most part, they all talk. Because deep down they want to get reelected. They really want to do anything. I don't care what side of the aisle you're on. They're all talkers and liars. And it's like, I have zero interest in what a politician says, but give me technical people, give me,
oh man,
that's the people I want to talk. That's the people I want to listen to. That's the people I want to know more about and what they're doing.
Well,
that's the community I want to be part of.
I'll take somebody that's executing on a mediocre or a poor idea all day long over somebody that's just sitting around and writing down ideas that never happen. I mean, it sounds stupid, but it's like, because people that are actually executioners, I don't know, whatever, people that are actually doing the stuff, are the ones that are likely, that they're going to have the will to get to the win eventually. It's not necessarily about, like I said, the idea. I want to go back to a conversation you and I had back in Detroit when I was there for Rapid, Chuck, about Repbox, and you talk about gut feel and stuff like that, and you told me, you said, you know what, you started doing that, and I was like, no, this thing is not. It's not going to do well. It's not going to sell. And listen, there's part of me that felt and thought the same way too. I still to this day feel like that is just a starting point of an idea of like what's going to get me to the next thing. But it certainly did way, 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 way better than we ever, I think, imagined it to, just out of partly sheer force of will and iterating and all that stuff. Same thing, it's like, so you can only take your gut feel so far, and you're not always going to be right. And you're willing to admit, like, I missed that one, like we miss stuff all the time. I'm wrong more often than I'm right on a daily basis. It's just,
there's a good point in there though. If you were to say, if I would have told you that early on,
Yeah.
and if you respected my opinion, and then you said, okay, Chuck knows this industry, I guess I'm not going to make this box.
Yeah.
That was wrong. I mean, I don't really want to do that to anybody, but I could tell you now, much later,
Right.
that I was wrong,
Yeah.
in my thinking, but I didn't, because we met at Maker Faire when you were first
Yeah.
promoting that thing. I didn't say that. I was thinking it, but I didn't say it. And all you did was go out and prove me wrong.
Yeah.
And that's why I was telling you there. It's like, I am so glad for you, so happy for you
Yeah.
that I was wrong, because you have proved that it's a great product and people want it and it's selling and it's awesome. And that's really what I was trying to tell you, is like, basically I'm proud of what you did, within the community. And so, I wouldn't have done it. I would have went down that path and said, nah, and I would have been wrong. So there's going to be times where you're going to have ideas that as someone else takes and makes successful, and you're like, oh man, I had that idea, should have done it.
Yeah.
No, because you didn't have the passion. You didn't have the idea. Go with the passions you have, make those work, let them have theirs. We all benefit in the end. But yeah, that was my point of that conversation is, dude, fantastic.
And I appreciate you telling me that. And I think that's exactly right. I don't think we want to discourage others. It's like, what's Confucius say? Man should not interrupt, I'm going to blow it, whatever. If somebody's doing it, you let them go for it. Right.
But the thing is, if someone is telling you, and a lot of times it's just people closest to you, it could be family or whatever, and they'll tell you, oh, that's not going to work, or don't do that.
Yeah.
Don't let that stop you. If you really have the passion, if you really have the idea, if you really want to go after it. I mean, just for example, I told my son, both my sons, they're both really good hockey players. They said, have a backup plan.
Yeah.
You want to make it the NHL, but have a backup plan. My one son started a business in the basement when he was a junior in high school, and turned into, that's what he does full time. He's got a big business that he runs. That he went with the backup plan. Connor told me, he says, Dad, I don't want a backup plan. I said, that's okay. It takes time to figure it out. He goes, no, I don't want one. He says, it's going to distract me. I'm going to keep going until I make the NHL. And
Man,
so
here it is, real quick.
Dad didn't help. He made it happen. So
man who says it cannot be done should not interrupt man doing it. It's a funny way. It's like, and it's a great way. It's one of my, it's flippant and whatever, but I think it's a good point. And I appreciate, in this day and age of people sharing opinions on the internet, and there's a million people out there going to be like, that's a stupid idea. You shouldn't do that. Go bury your head in the sand, go get, whatever. It sucks to see how demotivating it is out there. I appreciate that you, as another business person, can respect, I wouldn't do this myself, but you went out, you did it, you proved me wrong. That's great. Those are the little tasty snacks that motivate me, Chuck. It's all I'm telling you right now, the whole reason I'm in business is just to prove Chuck wrong. I love it. It just fuels my fire. I'm kidding.
I'm wrong a lot. We got a lot of opportunity.
Lots of fuel for my fire then. Lots of fuel. Anyway, we're closing in at the top of the hour, and I think we need to find a way to wrap this up with a nice, tidy bow. So many great nuggets. I feel like there's just great little sound clips we could pull out of here, and Chuck wisdom and all of that stuff. But I always love these conversations. I always value having guests with a lot of experience and stuff like that really provide a lot of energy to the conversation, a lot of perspective, sharing not just the wins but the fails. I mean, that's where a lot of that teaching lies a lot of the time. And finding your people that, inspire you. I hope that anybody out there that's just thinking about making a run, listening to this, I can't, we've talked about it before, the value of networking, find people, sharing ideas. Yes. Having ideas in the hopper. Yes. But at the end of the day, execute, go, just try it, because until you get there, until you start walking the path, you're not going to really truly know. And truthfully, it'll probably open up new opportunities that you haven't even, considered, as Chuck is a fantastic example of. You just got all those little, I want to see the 5-legged, somebody do the 5-legged Chuck table, because the pooch table is, 3-legged at best, very wobbly. But the CHEP table is a solid 5 points of contact with the ground at all times. So that's good. It's good.
The thing is, and this is again goes back to if you're a creator, some of the worst comments I ever received were from a book. Amazon, people go on there and just bash the heck out of you. I spent 2 years writing a book, and all I get is negatives. So when I got to YouTube and there's negative comments, that's why that stuff don't bother me, because it's not that I ignore it, because sometimes there's nuggets of information, there's nuggets of constructive criticism, but do not let those people win.
Yeah.
Keep going. You're going to get negative comments. You're going to get people telling you it won't work. You're going to get people you trust and love, whatever, telling you ain't going to work. Prove them wrong.
Yeah.
Follow your passion. Make it work. Don't rely on one revenue stream. See if you can develop up to 5 revenue streams and do what you want to do. And that's the best message I could give to anyone who wants to make money being a maker. Find your passion, go after it, and make it work.
Yeah. God, well said. And know yourself too. I would add know thyself, because I think everybody's path is going to be different and what works for them. But like some people operate better without a net, right? So you talk about your son that's in the NHL and stuff like that. No backup plan. I mean, I just respect that degree of just raw confidence, right? It's not for everybody. I don't know that I would always even recommend that. I'm more I'm a little more conservative. I would say have a backup plan and stuff like that. But there is no one path. And if you don't know how you are and what drives you, like think about what motivates you and how you operate and what it is that you need to get there. And Chuck, you're an inspiration. I think you just find that balance of inspiration just right. It's like you can tell, you're like, okay, well, I've said my piece. I'm not going to tell you how to live your life, and then I think that's just the right amount of inspiration and opinion. Let people kind of draw from it what they will. So I think it's a great approach. I love it. I hope I'm as inspiring to my kids someday too. So we'll see.
You are. You don't realize it. You are. Every parent is. They just don't realize it, but every parent is.
Right now, I'm just trying to get them to put their shoes anywhere but in the middle of the floor. So if I.
But you're running a business. You're running a business. You're doing stuff. They see that. They see what you're doing. They see the hours you're putting in. You see the work that you're doing. They're learning from that. And you don't even realize they're learning from it. Yeah. Those are the things, the lessons that you learn from your friends. You learn from successful people. If you hang around unsuccessful people, you don't learn a whole lot. So that's why, to me, those negative comments, those negative people, those people telling you don't do it, it's fine. They can have their opinions. That's fine. You don't have to block them. But the idea is that don't let that control you.
Yeah.
Stay to your passion.
Amen.
Follow the people who are successful. You'll learn more from them.
Amen. I got to call this out because it's genius. Somebody, for when you decide to do your podcast, consider Hellebuyck with Hellebuyck as a podcast name, because the guy's just hand over fist, right? Yeah. Chuck, thank you so much for joining us today. I love talking to you, man. A belated happy birthday to you as well. I know we didn't even say that at the top of the hour, but birthday boy, birthday wishes to you. Andrew, as always, man, thank you so much. Everybody in the chat, anybody listening back, like I said, if you want to join us in the chat, feed us questions, join us on the hotline, any of that stuff, you're welcome to do that. And if give us feedback, tweet at us. I got all our handles. If this is the kind of content you like, if you have suggestions for future pods and stuff like that, let us know. We love it. It's all about the conversation, and hopefully we're learning something and having some fun.
Subscribe to Filament Friday.
Subscribe to Filament Friday. Go check out his channel. Absolutely 100%. That is the key takeaway from this episode. Love you, man. Everybody, enjoy your weekend. Happy Friday, and we will catch you next Friday, 9 a.m. Pacific, for another Maker That Money. Until then, enjoy. Take care.